Rastafari.
My name is Afia and Billy Shaka. I'm a clinical psychologist and a hairstylist, and I'm from New York. I do want to highlight the Maasai of today's Kenya and Tanzania as being an excellent group of people to study connected to locks. The Maasai actually have an initiation process for warriorhood, and part of that, you have to grow locks. It distinguishes you from other parts of the community. So you can tell how long someone has been a warrior based on the length of their hair. They have to dye their hair this bright red color when they get locks as well. It's supposed to evoke warrior energy. So when you think about fire or blood, you think of the color red. And it's interesting because after a warrior has completed his time fighting, he has to get his locks shaved off. And there's only one person in the entire community who is allowed to shave his hair. It's his mother. It is representing this rebirth process. And so she will actually shave his hair with milk as part of this rebirth process. And so she'll take his hair after shaving it, bring it to a river, and cleanse the hair as a way to cleanse the spirit of her son. And so again, in the Maasai culture, locks have such significant meaning because it's connected to fighting. It's interesting because then for Kenya, when we go into more contemporary rituals, we can highlight the Mau Mau or the Kenya Land and Freedom Party or Kenya Land and Freedom Army. These were a group of people who were fighting British colonial rule. Sometimes we don't recognize that slavery happened in Africa, but it did. And so recognizing that the British were controlling people's labor and economic systems, all the systems. And so there was this undercover army that was developed. And in order to be in that army, you had to grow locks. It wasn't necessarily like an aesthetic, like, ooh, this is fashionable, but it was part of creating a collective. Oftentimes the people in this undercover army were living in the mountaintops. they weren't necessarily combing or cutting their hair until their hair became matted and grew as locks, but it was a unifying symbol to fight. But it's interesting because after the British said, fine Kenyans, we will let you have your country. There are a lot of people who were in that army who didn't believe it. For example, there was a woman named Karima Muthoni who had risen through the ranks of this undercover army, and she had locks. And so she, in the 1960s, when the British said that they would leave Kenya, she didn't believe them. She ran up into the mountains and said, I will only come down once the British stop controlling our entertainment, our education, our economics, our labor, our law, our politics, our sex, our religion, our war, our health. And do you think she ever came down? No, she is still in those mountains. And she actually says her locks represents the politics of Kenya, trying to keep white at the top and put black at the bottom. So her locks are a symbol of the struggles of Kenyan people. I definitely think DC is a cultural hub for blackness. And so I think, well, one, Howard University has brought black people throughout the diaspora to this space and to exchange and to even see the hairstyles. And locks are universal across African people. We can find locks anywhere. And so I think that this cultural exchange has solidified the presence of locks in DC. But also, I would say that there is a big African-centered community in DC. My understanding of the African-centered community is that for certain rituals for them, in order to get initiated, whether it's in a kompo or otherwise, they actually have to grow locks for 3 years. So I know that there's even big hubs of various African spiritual groups here, and it's part of their journey to grow locks. And so I think about, again, the spiritual pieces, the academic, intellectual piece that brings locks to DC to stay.
Too many people do your hair. I got 2 people that do my hair, Queen Locks and a girl named Shay. So I just let 2 people do my hair. Everybody can't touch your hair because, you know, it's a privilege to be touching some good dreads or whatever. So like I say, yeah, I take care of them as far as like, I don't go to everybody. You can't go to different people and get your hair done by different people who start to break your hair out, do all types of stuff. So.
People are always talking about locks don't need to be trimmed. So is that why your locks are breaking off at the ends? Is that why your hair looks uneven and damaged at the ends? Wait for a second. Doesn't hair need to be trimmed at the ends? Then why would you not trim your locks?
So I'm Z, and I manage both the salons in the DC area and the LA location. I came into Loc Love maybe 3 or 4 months after Charlie started, and he became popular very quickly. So he called me up and he was like, let's do this. So it's been since 2010, that we were here. So yeah, it's been a little minute. They're definitely much more prevalent here than probably any other place I've been, actually. So that's how Solly got here, because he would hear it all the time. And he knew, because that was also the word within the community, that the care wasn't there. I think that it has become so prevalent here just because of our history within this area. I think that, you know, it was Chocolate City before. It's kind of like Neapolitan now, but with it being, you know, Chocolate City, it was definitely more of us, and there was a lot more activism going on, and, you know, that brings, you know, a little rebellion as far as outer appearance, as far as people's actions, as far as unapologetic blackness in the area. And in the DMV area, I find that more stylists are very into, I'm gonna prove to you that I can do this thing that I may have never done, but you won't know that I've never done it. Or I do it and I've been doing it for a while, but I've never got formal training, I've never asked for help, I've never seeked support, and so I've just figured it out along the way. And so we came here because we knew that it would probably take off because of the difference in opinion on how to move in this space. I wish we could do more, but we will start teaching classes, and so I think that is one way that we can kind of give back to this space that is trying to constantly grow. That's one of the issues I think the natural hair community has had. We like to kind of hold on to the pots of gold, and it's so many of us around that I think just sharing would help with our communities overall. So yeah, stay tuned for that.
Hi, my name is Anton Loc. I'm from Washington, D.C. Started my locks like, I think it's 2 years ago now. I needed a good lock place, and it was like the only one around at the time, or the closest one by me. So I was like, I came to it, I liked it. It's kind of where I get my locks started. So my hair was long before I got locks, so it was always like the plan at the end of the day. And like a lot of people go through like the ugly phase, stuff like that, but I feel like I never really went through that. I feel like I just liked them in the time I got them. I feel like more people have grown too, like except for the way they look, and not just judge a person off his hair.
My name is Brenda Duvers. I'm from, I originally grew up in Miami, Florida, but I've been living in Washington, D.C. in and out for like the past 10 years. And I began my lock journey in the fall of 2013 after I graduated. So when I started locks, I was living in Botswana. And in Southern Africa, the lock culture is like very prevalent. Everywhere you looked, you like saw people with locks, or you knew of people who had locks one day. Having locks, it's part of my identity. I love them, so nothing anyone can say can change my perspective on them. So when I went to Howard, I feel like it played an instrumental role in me getting locks, but also it deterred me or delayed me in getting locks. Because on campus, I saw people with locks and I loved them. But at the same time, you know, then you would hear people like, why would you do that? You know, you're not going to get a job, and all these negative things about that are just not true. This sounds very bad, but sometimes with Black people in corporate America, that makes me feel the most anxious walking around with my locks in the office, especially if I don't have a fresh retwist and you know, my roots are outgrown, because then, you know, sometimes that's when the conversations come up again about, you know, how I have to do my hair, look a certain way. A lot of people in their mind also want locks, and they're just nervous or anxious about something that doesn't really matter. But then when you walk around and see people who you admire, or people you're just they're just so confident and happy. They're like, okay, I can do this too. And I think you see that here in DC. You see lots of different people with locks, and you're like, oh, this is not a barrier to anything.
My name is Blair Dotton Haley. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana. I live in Maryland now, and I started my lock journey in late 1999. I'd say is especially being at Howard in the 90s during the very, like the advent of the neo soul era and all of those kinds of things. I think that it really it acquainted me with natural hairstyles and locks in a way that in the South, I mean, even though in New Orleans there are lots of folks who have locks and have always locked. Natural hair has been a large part of the culture, which was why it was not hard for me once I got back home to start the process. I went through a depression after Katrina. I got addicted I was substance addicted, and in the middle of all of that, I was like, oh, I gotta get this off my head. It was just time for them to go. It had started like talking to me about them going. I started thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it, and then one morning it was just like, okay, so this is the morning. It was actually July of '06. So, yeah. Definitely like a kind of a cleansing.
You're saying very symbolic.
Oh yeah, for sure. That one was very symbolic in a lot of ways. It's the only time I've ever cut them off. And the only time I've ever cut them myself or trimmed them myself. Once I started growing my locks, I kind of developed this, if they want me to cut my hair, then I don't want to work there. I remember having the conversation with my parents because I was telling them, I'm like, y'all, I'm not gonna cut my hair. And they were like, you would pass up? I was like, if I gotta cut it to go, I don't know if I wanna go. I mean, I know for sure I have not gotten opportunities, likely because I had locks and they couldn't say that. But yeah, I'm glad I made that decision, have stuck to that decision the whole way through. I think DC, because it has such a very large population of black folks, it always has, it's kind of inevitable. I mean, even when I was at Howard in the 90s, there was a loctician in the shop where I was, before I had my lock, before I was even thinking about locks. When I still had a fade, there was a loctician in the shop where I was near Howard. And so I think because DC has always been so very black, so very progressive, so very in tune, I mean, culturally, I think it's why there's so many people here who go down this journey, who are on this journey.
My name is Roz. I'm 25. I'm from DC. I started my locks when I was 2. My mom, my dad, and my 2 older sisters, they all had locks. My mom started all of our locks when we were around 2 or 3. So it's like a whole family affair. My mom has probably been growing her locks for like 30 years. My dad probably the same amount of time. My mom had locks first. My dad had cornrows and he was smoking cigarettes. And my mom like completely changed his entire life. So he locked his hair and then quit cokehead because she was not happy. I know my mom was really like going through like a spiritual journey. Like she was trying to figure out like religion-wise and everything. I know she was studying more about like Rastafari and things like that. So I know that she wanted to lock her hair because of that.
But the music person never cut your locks, right?
Because it's your connection to God. If you cut them, it's kind of like severing the tie.
My name is Dakari, and I'm from DC, Maryland. Started working at Loc Doc maybe about 4 years ago, 4.5, 5 years ago. Oh yeah. A family friend, her name is Tia Mosley. She started it here in DC too. We're still very close. But yeah, after I moved on campus, and she was here in DC, and my campus was in Maryland in Bowie State. And it was just too tough getting back and forth. I wasn't driving, so I started doing it myself. The process of retwisting my own locks, I only do it if I really have to. I'd rather sit back and be spoiled like, you know, everybody else, but it's a lot of shoulder work, so it's a lot of this, you know, so you gotta stretch. Well, we are in a natural hair movement, you know, so, and I think that's definitely a strong point right there. Also, it's not as high maintenance as loose hair, you know, so it's hard to do your own hair, so locks are pretty easy to maintain, you know. More of the judgment comes from people not understanding what locks are, or like, you know, people still think locks are made up from mud and just taking mud and putting them together, or using glue to put them together. And I think once people get more of an education on why people choose locks and how to actually start them and how you can maintenance and maintain them, people will show more of appreciation towards it.
Hi, I'm Janique. I'm from Maryland. I started working at Loc Doc about 3 months ago. Right now I'm just an assistant. Basically all I do is prep the stylist, wash the client's hair. And that's what wash it is. Basically just, first we use the tea tree, and basically just the scrubbing process to get the dandruff and everything out. Then we use the moisturizer, which is moisturize the client's hair. Then the conditioner. We leave the conditioner in there for moisturizer as well. That's about it. My daughter have locks, but I'm gonna get some soon. So I locked her hair because normally, like, when people's hair is so thick, they don't have nothing to do with it. Her hair is really, really thick. So that's why I locked it. I started when she was 2, and I just couldn't I couldn't comb through it or anything. And most people that come in here that start locks is because their hair is thick, and they just try to, you know, get in braids or whatever else they get into it. And that's really all I can think of, really just the thickness and just tired of it. And it's natural. When I started working here, I didn't notice so many people had locks, actually. I was amazed, like, wow, Loc Doc have a lot of clients, like it's LA, DC. I didn't know so many people had locks like that. I see them, but it's crazy. It makes me want to lock my hair. I was telling one of the stylists the other day that I was going to lock my hair. Like, I'm inspired by so many locks, the different styles, the way you can still color them and stuff like that.
It ain't no relationship, but it's like I got a connection. Yeah, I got you. I got what you're saying. You like connected. Yeah, but it's like once I started growing them, I just started getting more and more connected, because the more longer and longer they grow, you start to feel like you growing with them. So that's how I got connected with them. So. Go, right? People used to be in the club, right? They used to be jumping up and down. Their hair used to be, you know, going everywhere all wild. So I used to be like, man, one day, man, I'm gonna grow my hair so my hair could be all going everywhere when I get to dancing, whatever. So, yeah, so that was go-go though. So, yeah, it made my hair, you know, made me want to, you know, just grow my hair, because I seen everybody in the club jumping up and down, people's hair going everywhere and shit like that. That's all.
My name is Fiona Harvey. I'm a writer, an occasional professor, occasional librarian, and I write comic books, I write poems, I write nonfiction. Okay, so, well, first thing is, it wasn't my family didn't predict that I would have locks. My family is way too conservative to have that kind of prediction. But I went to a Howard University meetup. You know, they would have geographical meetups for people who had been admitted to Howard. So somewhere in the Cincinnati, Ohio area, there was a really cool Black woman who hosted for students who had been admitted to Howard, so we could get to know each other and maybe not be so alone when we got to campus. So the woman who hosted that event was like telling my mom and me, yeah, when she gets to Howard, she's gonna change so much. You won't even recognize her. She'll probably have locks. And I thought that was insane. I thought this lady didn't know what she was talking about. But in answering your question, I think Howard, just from the door, I mean, just first of all, just being away from home lets you relax and get to know yourself in a way that you just wouldn't through the confines of your family dynamic and whatever, you know, pressures of high school. So, but when I got to Howard, it was just this incredible freedom and this incredible love for Blackness. I guess you could call it Afrocentricity. Nobody uses that word anymore, but there was just such a hardcore embrace of natural hair, braids and locks and low cuts, no cuts, you know, and I had just never been around so much diversity in terms of hair. So that was really the appeal. That, I mean, people just looked beautiful. I mean, nobody was judging really if you had a relaxer or a perm, but you know, once you got there, it just looked so boring and dated and tired and old-fashioned, you know what I mean? And so to be at Howard and to cut your hair, you know, that was like the first step in this great progression, you know, to freedom. Like, so yeah, that's what I remember. The first time I started them myself, and it was actually kind of unsuccessful. So I did it and it looked fine to me. And then I had an aunt and a cousin who lived in St. Croix at the time. And so however long, maybe I had my locks going for about a year. And then I went for the summer to go visit my aunt in St. Croix, and she was really close friends with a sister who was from Brooklyn. And so she had locks and they looked amazing. And she was looking at my hair and she was like, you know, this is gonna let me pull your locks, let me style them for you, because they're gonna get matted and you're gonna have this total mess. And so she came over to my aunt's house like a couple days later that night, and she literally retwisted a lot, you know, pulled the locks apart and gave them more, I don't know, not shape or definition, but she prevented them from being matted, essentially. And I mean, I'll always be grateful to that woman, because I think if she hadn't done that, I probably would have gotten frustrated with them and maybe cut them off. I don't know what I would have done, but she really put in work. She stayed up with me late at night. I think my cousin like cooked her dinner, as a, you know, but she didn't ask for anything. And she showed me which product she thought, you know, would help me. And so that was the beginning of a really great hair journey. So the locks carried me all through the rest of university, through graduate school, through marriage, on and on. And then my sister died. And so just, I felt really stressed out around that time and frustrated and pulled in a lot of different directions. And so I just decided I was gonna cut my hair off. So I cut them off, and then I had it shaved all the way down at that time. And then I had a really amazing neighbor Miss Xanadu. She's amazing. And, you know, she would stop by my house a lot to check on me and bring toys and clothes for my daughter, all the sweet stuff. And so she saw me after I cut my hair and she was like, you know, and she asked me why, and I told her that story, and she said, oh, in Africa, that's what we do, you know, we shave our hair when someone dies. You know, and Miss Xanadu was from Liberia, and she immigrated later. She came back to the US. So it was just kind of an interesting story to hear her talk about that too. So, yeah. It was Afua Richardson. She's an incredible artist. My God, my hero. So that was really, I don't take any credit for that. And also, I'm sorry, Brian Stelfreeze also. So, because Lindsay, before I started to write for that character, you know, Ta-Nehisi Coates and Brian Stelfreeze were writing and drawing for her. So that look was already there. And so I would love to take credit for it, but it's just kind of a cool connection, you know what I mean? But yeah, it was already in place. Yeah, I mean, natural hair was a thing. I think it was common enough. Like, I didn't feel like I was doing something way out the box when I did it. Like, clearly there were people around me on campus in the city proper who had locks, but it definitely was not like it is today, you know. And I knew when I would go back home for holidays, so to be in Southern Ohio, I would definitely get looks, and people in my family would comment that, you know, you can't keep your hair like that. I just had a cousin. It wasn't a lot of people, but, you know, just like I had an older cousin who was like, you know, you're gonna have to cut your hair or change your hair. You're not gonna be able to get a job with your hair like that. So there was a lot of ignorance around locks, you know, because quietly when they were talking to me, I had a job. I've always had a job. So I just thought that was funny. Yeah.
And then, so, okay, you just said when did it start? So how long has that been?
Give or take 8 years. I started them right after my firstborn was born.
And so what's your relationship with your locks? Do they mean anything?
Oh, this is wisdom and love and grace and strength and courage. Our black ancestors fought for this, honey, okay? All natural. Look, she like them. This Bubbles, she likes to play with them. Yes.
Okay.
I'm sweating like shit.
So you said you're from Baltimore, but do you consider yourself a part of DMV? And then
Absolutely. I've been here for 15 years. Okay. I went to high school here.
So do
I went
that
to
play a role?
Absolutely. I didn't even girl, I was a bald head honey. I ain't had no edges. I had a bun.
Came from Bob Marley.
Yes, they did. They started from Bob Marley.
And from down in Jamaica.
Jamaica.
It means something. It's
Locks.
the root locks. I forgot what it means, but like daughters.
Google it. Google's knows everything.
So,
Purple.
locks and dreams are two different types.
Yeah, they are. They're two different meanings.
You got the ones, you got the rocksters, the locks is for like Bob.
Dread started from white people.
Exactly.
White people, okay. Locks started from Mother Nature, okay.
So these are human.
Oh, honey.
Yes.
Yes.
So I
Look, she likes it.
So, you know,
Beautiful. And black people, Juneteenth was Freedom Day, 2021.
And I'm also
I love my locks. You cannot fire a black person because of their locks. You cannot do anything to a black person anymore. You know what I'm saying? 2021.
Okay, I'm Precious, the Aquarius god. I'm from Florida.
I'm Indigo, and I'm a Gemini from New York.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey everybody, my name is Nexus. I come from New York, originally the Bronx, also repping Englewood, New Jersey, and I'm a Capricorn, so you gotta stay grounded.
My name is Amavi. I'm from Charlotte, and I'm a Libra.
My name is Danae. I'm from Maryland, and I'm also a Libra.
Dreads are locks. If you call my locks dreads, I might, depending on where you're coming from, it depends on the person who's saying it to me.
That's the key.
Yeah, so I mean, if you feel like you couldn't call them dreads to me, probably don't.
Yeah, I think my thing is that I really don't even know if I believe like the origin that people say like dreads is bad.
Yeah,
I'm like, I don't know, because I ain't really like I researched that shit multiple times because I'm like, okay, no, somebody gotta have the truth. And the only thing I seen was like, not only thing, but the one that makes more sense, like historical wise, is that it's connected to like Rastafarian religion, like dreadful God, like like dread, like that. So I understand in that sense, but also I don't know what white niggas was on, like they were right was saying that shit too. But yeah, to me it's not. Yeah, to me I just feel like it's. I'm not sure on either part. I'm not gonna get offended by no other black person calling my shit dreads or dreadlocks because I know that's not where it's at. So yeah.
Like growing up, I always heard like dreadlocks and like, you know, Rasta context, Jamaican context, so like that don't bother me. But if we're not in community, like I prefer you not even talk about my hair for real. But like if you gonna do that, at least call them locks. So like, but personally, it's kind of interchangeable for me.
Me and the homies were just talking about this the other day, and like what I said was like, this is like, I don't know, but I was saying like, bruh, for one, that thing, like we don't know that like dread is bad as a word. Like dread is like a cute word to me too. I'm a dark nigga too, but dread is like a pretty word to me. And then also, it's like if I was really worried about like what white people is gonna call my hair, I wouldn't have grew my hair like this. And also, like I think like there's more. I feel like I hear more black people call it dread. And that make me believe that less so that white people invented it, because I never heard black people and white people agree on the name of a hairstyle. Ever. Like, yeah. But that's how it is. Like, you can call it what you want, bro. Like, I don't know. And just don't touch my shit. Like, you will be good. Like, but if you white, like, don't you really speak on my shit at all. Really. I agree with that point. Like, don't really even speak on my shit. Like,
I got a question. So, do y'all feel like, from like an outer point of view, do y'all feel like has locks affected? It's kind of like a perception question. How do you feel like locks has affected how people perceive you, or do you feel like there has been any like limitations or like groups that people have tried to put you in now that you like look the way you look, basically? Of course, but
I think having locks, like the people that like I'm associated with just because having locks, I'm not mad at. It's kind of funny, like people associated me with y'all niggas. Like, they're like, oh, Danae, you be with the art niggas. Like, I mean, they're my friends. Yeah, I see them occasionally, but like, I don't be on the same moves as them. But like, because of how I look, they was like, yeah, you one of them. Which I'm not mad at. Y'all my niggas for real. But like, I thought that was funny.
That's funny.
That's funny.
Yeah, certain times I just be like sometimes, bro, like, boom, I just be like posted up outside of some shit. I give you a perfect illustrative example. One time, I was going to dinner in fucking Los Angeles with somebody who's regular rich, and we both got dreads. And so we go in that bit, like, as soon as I hop out the lift, like, to go into the Korean restaurant, nigga be like, no, what are you doing? Like, that's what he told me. Like I was just hopping out to go running somebody's house or something. I really just hopped out to a business plaza to go to a restaurant. So shit like that, for sure. And it's like, yeah, people don't. I think the amazingly unifying part of the locks is that like any kind of black person can have them. And so it speaks to black multiplicity and just how we wear it and express it. But for sure, the perception is definitely rooted in like nigga, like my auntie told me, she was like, she came in my room the other day, she was like, Marty, you a full nigga. What happened? I'm like, yo, like why I gotta be all of that, bro? Like, I don't know, bro. But just shit like that, like you catch yourself, like sometimes like I be like, I wonder shit like that, but then like I'll look at my reflection like off the side of a car or something, and I'll be like, okay. Okay. I get it. But yeah.
I think people like assume that I'm very like peaceful or like calm. I can be those things, but those aren't like staple traits of my personality, I wouldn't say.
I feel like for me, it comes in a lot of different directions, especially depending where I'm at, especially coming from like New York, the different neighborhoods I'm in. Like sometimes I'll be walking the street and someone like very positively, they're like, "Hey, Rasta, right? Rasta." Oh yeah. That shit always happens. Specifically, that shit happened to me like 2 weeks ago in Dykeman.
You can tell how you dress too. Like we wear baggy clothes and like certain kind of things.
Smelling like weed.
Yeah. But that's the best part.
Yeah. Nah, literally.
Nah, that is like it's a community in that shit too. Like, bro, like I remember when I was a little boy, my daddy used to have like long dreads, and like niggas in the street like who ain't know him used to be like, "Hey, dread," like to get his attention, and niggas would say that to me too, and that shit tough to me. Like, like it's like yeah, I fuck with that.
Going back to that calm thing too, another perspective is like I'll be chilling, and like I'm a pretty calm person too. Sometimes I'm just observing the room, but they come up to me, they're like, "Oh," I mean, I guess people do this a little bit more now, but they always ask me for their sign, or they introduce themselves with their sign, and they say some spiritual quote unquote thing to me. Like, it could come from anywhere. Like they're like, "Oh, yo, you fuck with like stones and shit." I'm just like, I mean, yeah, they cool. I don't know too much, but like they cool. I'm not here to teach you nothing, but.
And when you hop out to the gas station, niggas be like, "Hey, bro, you fuck with the gas?"
Yeah, every single time. They're like, "Yo, nah."
You got a lighter?
How if you got a lighter is actually how I met Precious.
Yeah.
But anyways, fucking. I think the question I get the most, and it also depends. The sentence depends on, and the delivery depends on where I'm at. They're like, "Yo, you got funnel? Yo, you got grabber?" Yeah. I feel like I did not hear that as much until I got the locks, bro. And like that shit's crazy. It's not like I didn't like have the stoner eyes before, but when I got the locks, it's like, "Oh shit, this nigga got grabber." I'm gonna ask him.
I think like how locks relate also to like people perceiving me as either masculine or feminine or anything in between is also interesting. Like I've noticed depending on the way I style my hair, and then of course like that's everybody, but locks definitely push people into perceiving me, from what I understand, is more masculine. But that's cool with me.
But yeah, that's some shit, especially in childhood, because I feel like even like regardless of locks specifically, but if you just got like if you wear your hair naturally, you wear your hair like quote unquote nappy, like or nappy for real, like fuck it, but like if you wear your hair like that, you are kind of perceived masculine, especially if you dark skinned. Like that shit was second nature to me, especially, or at least like just I feel like dark skinned black girls, like in a young age, you constantly reassessing like what make you look feminine, what make you look masculine, what make you look in between. And especially when I started wearing my natural hair, that was always hyper until I decided to really like, you really gotta disassociate your shit from that, because it's not even in your roots for real. Like that's not even the same like femininity. The femininity that we speak on in the mainstream culture would never like. That never was yours. So you gotta make that shit your own if you gonna claim it.
Why does it?
Right. So yeah, that's where I feel like that plays a big role, because it make you kind of like shed your skin, because like you just gotta come off that shit.
I was just talking about that shit.
Yeah.
And like for me, locks were never like masculine or feminine, because like both my grandmothers have locks, both my uncles have locks. Like
I feel like
my daddy and my mama had locks.
I feel like if anything, locks is a thing that don't got a connection to any gender, and that's why it's great because when all black people can have it, and then like there's no gender involved. Like
I would like to interject for the lesbian community and say, but no, please finish and then I'll
keep it going.
Because like, how do I express this? When like there's all these made up rules when it comes to being gay that like you can choose to believe in, you can choose to follow them if you feel like it, whatever. But people will try and figure out who you are based on how you present yourself, how everybody does.
Right.
But there's like set boxes that are kind of like agreements, just like we agree boy and girl. Some people agree that, you know? And a lot of like studs, stems, more masculine presenting. Yeah. And then people assume that, I mean, I don't know what I am, I don't care. But like, whatever people think I am, most people think it's more masculine, and I think it's an association between locks and less femmes having locks. But I do know a lot of femmes with locks now, in the last couple of years, more from what I've seen in my community. I can't speak for every single community, is getting more locks.
That low key got me thinking. People be like, I knew you was gay when I met you.
Bruh.
Did you? And now I'm thinking, is it because of my hair? Or is it because of the piercings in my face?
I mean,
there
is some what we say. It's gay aesthetics that we could agree on.
Gay
niggas can agree on. Come on,
that's queer aesthetics. My roommate, before we even got to Howard, she said she found me on Facebook. She was like, I need from your Facebook. I said, I had one picture on there. Like, what you talking about? But it might be the hair. I don't know. Yeah.
What are some ways locks have formulated parts of your identity? How's it going? I like that. Well, it's funny because before I got locks, everyone in my previous life before that knew me as like, oh, like, just do with the curls, do with the curls, do with the fro, do with the curls. Like my boy, my friend called me Captain Curl one day, and like that kind of stuck. But then like I got the locks because like, you know, I felt like I was a little too connected to the curls, you know. I know it sounds weird, but like because it's literally on my head, it's connected to my head, but like it became something like bigger than my identity. So like, you know, I'm going into a space and going to a place different from where I come from, and you know, I want to solidify myself like how I want to be seen. So that definitely helped me with that. And honestly, like being a locked up nigga, that helps. In my personal opinion, that helps with like being a musician, cause like I don't know, cause my thing, one of my reasons why I grew my hair out is cause I wanted to like move it crazy, like when I'm listening to music. So like when I started really performing heavy, DJing heavy out here and as well as back home, that kind of helped bring the energy to myself and create like a literal physical flow around me that like kept me motivated, like kept me going through like those ugly phases of your locks, quote unquote ugly phases you want to cut it off. And like those parts of the journey also helped formulate me because it made me realize that like sometimes when I get uncomfortable doesn't mean I gotta quit right away. So like locks definitely helped me get even more grounded into my own stuff.
Shit. What are some ways locks have formulated parts? Well, like when I was a young nigga, and my name is Omadi too, but like I'm not like, I hate to be like this, like I'm not an African, like I'm a nigga though. And so coming up like having dreads and being named Omadi, like he used to like pick on me like say I'm an African, but then like, and they used to pick on my dreads for different reasons in general, like not having a retwist. I swear to God, I was the first nigga to not have no retwist, never. On my mama, I stamped it. I was in 3rd grade, 2nd grade, no retwist, thugging, say something. Anyways, I remember like my granddad used to tell my mama, he was like, girl, you ain't gotta cut it, but why don't you do something with that? I'm like, Lord. And so, yeah, bro. So that was like first wave mob, like early. But then like when I started turning like 15, 16, 17, that shit like turned to some fly shit. Like not even only some cool shit, but like some fly shit. Like you look cool just by having that. And at first it was like the short dreads. Then it was like the long dreads, and I was like, damn, like I already got y'all niggas beat. But basically, like a lot of things about myself isolated me through my formative years, where I was the only person to be feeling a way that I've been feeling, and that taught me like that's okay and good. You know, you gotta be able to be the only person, because like, not because there's nothing exotic or fancy about me or the idea of having locks, but it's just sometimes you gonna have to like everybody not gonna know what's cool at the same time. So if you know something cool, like just stand on that shit. Like you know you believe in some shit, just stand on that shit. You know what I'm saying? But yeah.
So I would say having locks for me is like, it kind of goes with my whole go with the flow lifestyle. Like for me, whatever happens, happens, and that's just how I feel about everything in life. So me having locks is like, they gonna look how they look, they gonna lock however they lock. You know, like I get my retwists every now and then, but for the most part, I just let my hair do whatever. So I think that plays a big part of my identity and like my personality for real. Just letting my shit grow, letting myself grow, letting it do whatever it wants. Like I get the undercut and stuff sometimes, but the rest of my head is just gonna do whatever. And then like my family's Jamaican, a lot of them have locks, so I feel like that also helps me connect with my family in some ways. It's mostly the men in my family, but still like I do feel connected with them, seeing their hair and like growing mine out.
Yeah. Most of the ways is like second to what Omari said, like really feeling like you in the know on some shit and really niggas just not on to it yet. Like I've been like that a lot with like even the way I just express myself with clothes and like fashion and just being my own nigga with music and stuff like that. Like niggas was not on that shit when we was younger, and it's like it sets you apart because a lot of like, especially because we're in the digital age, like a lot of it's kind of like retroactive. Like we doing the same cycles of like niggas discovering that some shit was cool after they did not fuck with that shit, and most niggas was not on it. So I believe in having like natural hair, especially like those formative years where like you was a black girl that was really like wearing your shit, wearing your afro, having the short locks and all that shit, and niggas was not like fucking with it aesthetically, desire wise, beauty standard wise. So it just make you feel like not even on some like bragging shit, like one up shit. It's just like you knew you was solid back then with the way that you like believe in yourself, basically. So definitely that individuality for sure.
That really resonated with me. I think like I didn't really think too heavy into it when I was younger, and then I was kind of prompted to think more heavily into how my locks related to my identity as I started to shape and understand the identity that I have. It was kind of like I was doing things that resonated with me because they felt good, and then asking why later. And the answer that I found so many over the years, because it's been like 6 years, so every year is a new reason. But there's never been a reason for me not to have them. I always feel comfortable, and I feel vibrant, and I feel beautiful, and I feel like I'm representing myself the way I want to.
My loc journey helped me heal through being adultified as a child. Helped me through body dysmorphia. Helped me through sexual assault. They were a really powerful tool that brought so much transformation in my life. And through that transformation, I coped by changing up my hair a lot. I shaved off one side of my locks, rocking the Kalila style. I've, put box dye in my locks. So many damaging things for your hair. Just seeking that change, seeking my environment and my aesthetic to reflect the change within me. But I got to a certain point where I wanted to change my relationship with my locks and have it be an extension of self-care, as opposed to an outlet for expressing my emotions, or, a stomping ground of some of my manias. I've combed out locks, I've cut off locks in having manic episodes. So I needed to cut them off. As much as they were helpful, because of just the spiritual power that they carry, it needed a new season. I needed to have a new season with my locks.
So there is a huge relationship between hair and psychology. Basically, hair can represent your identity, how you see yourself, and it serves as a litmus test for what's going on inside of your head. So if we define psychology as the scientific study of behavior and mental processes, we can definitely understand how hair can reflect the way someone thinks, feels, and behaves. So psychotherapy is using hair as an entry point into mental health services. And so before there was a Freud or any of these other famous European psychologists, we were always taking care of each other and each other's mental health. But I think hair has been really important for millennia. So if we look back to ancient Egypt, also known as ancient Kemet, we can see that locks were actually used as a part of initiation, that it was a part of a spiritual journey, that only those who had reached a certain level of consciousness or spirituality could actually grow locks. We see that locks are on mummies thousands of years later, so it's an indication and evidence that locks were something privileged and special. And so we have to recognize that the healers in that time also engaged in these hair rituals. Hair is the highest point on our entire bodies, and therefore the most connected to the divine. To some degree, our hair is like an antenna and can pick up on other people's energy. And so I definitely think that ancient Africans really appreciated that connection to the spiritual world through our hair. And so when we think about our minds, right, that it's definitely connected to our hair, and because our hair is the closest part to our brain when we think about that. But ultimately, we can look back about how rituals have been so connected to hair care processes. So a ritual is basically the way we prepare our mind, body, and spirit to receive a blessing. And so there are rituals related to our mental health, related from birth all the way through death for our hair. So whether it's a baby naming ceremony in West Africa, where babies' hair actually has to get shaved about 7 to 10 days after their birth in order to get a name. And as we know, in your name is inscribed your destiny. And so it's very selective all around the African continent about what name we get, because that's going to push us on our wellness journey. Also, even thinking about initiations in terms of rites of passage program. In order to complete it, you oftentimes had to get a certain hairstyle to indicate that you mastered certain information and that you had a balance with your community. Even in getting married, there were certain hairstyles that our ancestors had to wear as part of rituals, indicating to the community that you are no longer on the market and now you're focused on family building and nation building. Even thinking about, there are death rituals connected to hair and how the hair can be prepared. So all of these different things are the way that we get our mind ready for something to happen. And our African ancestors mastered the technique of hairstyling as a way to cope.
And then have they taught you any lessons?
Oh, well, the locks are like an antenna anyway, so they bring, well, it depends on how your personality is. They bring actually spiritual enlightenment, because they're like antennas, so they can bring it, or they can bring other, so this on how your personality is and how you cultivate yourself,
Like what you attach to them. Like,
yeah.
Okay. So what do they mean to you?
What do they mean? Just originality. I like the beginning of things, when things were simple and sweet, and it's just reality to, it's just the beginning. That's what I like,
nigga. Act natural.
Act natural.